Hello and welcome back to a very exciting, action-packed, full of information episode of the Northern Steel Podcast. Episode 9, baby. Almost at 10. You know what? We got a lot to talk about today because last Thursday through Saturday was the NFL Draft. And it was very, very exciting. Now, we're going to, obviously, that is what is on everyone's mind. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be going through the whole first round, I think, because that was a very crazy and intense time. All of the Steelers picks, some UDFAs, and I feel like that will be plenty to talk about in today's episode. Don't you think, Chris?
I definitely do.
Now, if you have not, if you haven't seen already, we have posted a bonus episode podcast. I posted it a couple days ago. I did a live stream of the draft. Unfortunately, Chris could not make it. He was working an event for his job at a high school sporting event, and it had an hour-and-a-half delay for lightning, which was nuts, and they should have just called the game, but they did not. So I believe Chris was done with his event when there was maybe 7 picks left. So it's just me, baby. But Chris, you know, he phones in. You get some color commentary from my dad as well. And I'd encourage you to, if you're a fan of not just the Steelers, but any team, to listen to that reaction because the first round was pretty insane.
Yeah, I'll say this. There's nothing more heartbreaking than getting that long delay because we had been planning that draft for so long. And that just honestly is like a sad boy hours in my car as Dom just talked to me about the last final picks. And I was like, oh, cool. I'm glad I missed the entire first round. But that's not the point of this.
Now, as exciting as it was, I tried to make it funny. I tried to make it entertaining. Please listen to that bonus episode podcast. I cut it down so you're not listening to 3.5 hours of content. It is our normally the normal length of these podcasts, just under an hour, and just kind of the highlights. But I think let's just get right into it. Let's not waste any more time. Let's go. Let's talk about the very first round of the NFL Draft and kind of the insanity. We can also kind of give our opinions on some of these picks. I don't know. Again, we don't know every single player. We spent a lot of time going over the Steelers' potential prospects, but there's a lot of things there. So the very first pick off the board was Jaguars' Travon Walker. And I believe a lot of people had maybe Travon or Aiden Hutchinson going in the first, and they decided to go with Travon. I guess a huge shock. It kind of was leading towards that way at the end. What did you think, Chris?
I mean, I'm not really surprised at all. Travon Walker was someone who was very highly regarded and was talked about a lot as potentially moving into that first spot, and the Jaguars taking him. Obviously, he's a hell of a football player. He's going to do a lot of good things. It wasn't a bad pick by any means. So really interesting to not see Aiden Hutchinson go first because he was the guy that was talked about as that number one pick, but they got a really good guy out of Travon Walker.
Well, see, now I don't know if you've watched the tape or if you're just kind of assuming that he's really good based on him being a number one pick, but I raised the question, and you can call me a casual all you want because truly I did not watch the tape, so I really don't know. I really don't know, but seeing, I mean, he's very fast, he's athletic. But I have 2 questions. Why did he raise up the boards so fast in that first round? Because he's from Georgia, right? He's on Georgia's line. So yeah. Why did he raise up the boards? His stats last year weren't eye-popping by any means. He had, I believe, 7.5 sacks last year as a defensive lineman, which is fine. But we got a guy who got more in last year. He's very athletic. I also asked the question, too, is he a product? And are the other players a product of each other? Because that defensive line is Travon Walker, Devontae Wyatt, and Jordan Davis. Are they all kind of a product of each other? Are they just that good because all 3 of them are really good? Now, I'm not saying Travon Walker was a bad pick by any means. I'm very curious as to why he jumped the board so quickly in like the month before the draft started.
Yeah, and I don't know really how Georgia ran their defense because I know Trayvon Walker is an edge defender. But overall, like you were saying, and we talk about this every single year, especially when looking at big schools like Georgia or Alabama, you never know if it's actually the player that is that good and talented, or if they're just a part of this big system because they're surrounded by all these great athletes. I mean, I watched a little bit of Trayvon Walker tape. I thought he was really, really good. I feel like the common theme of what we've seen, especially in this draft, is how important someone's pro day is. Because I know a lot of players either rose up in the boards or tanked because of their pro day. So maybe it was because of his pro day that kind of pushed him to that front spot. I'm not really sure, but it's an interesting pick to say the least.
Yeah, and sometimes pro days too are a little. They're sometimes they can be more hurtful than helpful. Maybe this isn't the case, but it is football in shorts. So when you see somebody who plays really impressive in shorts, it's like, well, can that translate to on the field? Obviously, he played well. I'm not talking about Trayvon in general, or specifically, I should say, but in general, maybe it doesn't translate. Don't want to spend too much time on every single pick, but those are just kind of some thoughts I had on that.
Yeah.
Aiden Hutchinson went next. Cool for him. Went to college at Michigan. Stays in Michigan. Playing for the Detroit Lions. Hopefully they can turn something around there. The third pick of the draft was Derek Stingley to Houston. I was a little shocked that he went above Sauce, but I had read a tweet that Lovie Smith, who's the defensive-minded guy, he really wanted Derek Stingley. And he was really talking to the GM and the brass. I don't know if he maybe switched their mind, if they had anyone else in mind, but they got their guy they wanted. So can't be upset about that. Then the Jets, boy, we're gonna get to. They have 3 picks in the first round, so we'll get to them later. But they had a great first round. Their first pick was Sauce Gardner, 4th round, the number 4 overall. Now what to say about him? He's a stud, shut down. And you need to be in that division. With Buffalo, you have, Stephon Diggs. I don't know why I couldn't say that right. Stephon Diggs. And you have Miami now, who's got the speedy receivers in Tyreek and Waddle. So you need some shutdown guys if you want to be competitive with the Jets. Try to keep up in that division. The 5th overall pick was Kayvon Thibodeau. He is going to be that was a great pick for the Giants because I felt like maybe they didn't think, maybe they thought like a lineman was going to go earlier, maybe to the Texans or whatnot. But Kayvon fell right into their lap, and Azeez Ojulari last year for the Giants played really well as an outside edge rusher. So now you're kind of pairing both these really young edge rushers. Hopefully that can bring some stability to New York. The thing is like, I'm talking very positively about this, but we just love football. Like, yes, this is a Steelers theme podcast, and we're excited about the Steelers picks, which we'll get to later. But I'm excited about football, and it's really exciting to see teams that have not been good these past couple of years that have early picks get better. That's the whole point of the draft. That's why the order is the way it is.
And I do think, too, with what we did and all the research we put into it and doing all these players, it's a lot more fun for us to actually be like, oh, this guy was an absolute baller, or like, hey, I really like this guy. I'm really curious how he's going to do on this team or that team. It's a lot of fun to kind of see how you feel they're going to fit into the mold of these teams and just kind of see how they're going to perform for their rookie season. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so I think that was a great pick for the Giants, and they have another pick soon after. But first, pick 6 for the Panthers. We thought maybe, hey, Panthers could be getting a quarterback here, could be getting Malik or Kenny. They did not. How could you when potentially the best tackle was on the board? And Ikem Ekwonu, I hope I said that right. I said it 4 different ways, I think, in my live reaction. But how could you not pick him? So great pick for that. Good for the Panthers for not reaching on a quarterback. And, they got theirs later. They got Matt Corral in the 3rd round. Then you got Giants back at it at 7 after just getting Kayvon Thibodeau, who was at one point projected to maybe be the number 1 pick. Then they get Evan Neal, one of the top tackles in the draft out of Alabama, shoring up both sides of the line, which is very exciting for the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
After that, you have the Falcons, who took the first receiver off the board. If I was a gambling man, that would not be the receiver I would have picked. Not to say he's bad, because he's obviously good. He was going to go in the first round regardless. But the Atlanta Falcons picked Drake London. I also had a little tidbit in my bonus episode 2 where Drake the rapper put $100,000 that Drake London would go in the top 10. And he was right. But I feel like he got inside info from Atlanta, and he knew that already. He fleeced the system. He got him. Drake London, that's not... I think a lot of people really like it. It's hard to say if I like it for Atlanta. Now, not as familiar sometimes with some NFC teams. I think Atlanta has a lot of holes. But, especially with quarterback, with Mariota, and they did draft Ritter later. But I guess the thought is that Drake London is 6'4", Kyle Pitts is 6'6", basically is a wide receiver, the way he plays tight end. I mean, I say just throw it up, see what happens.
I will say it is funny that you brought up gambling with the Atlanta Falcons.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Ooh.
especially when talking about the wide receiver position.
Ouch.
But talk about a gamble. Am I right? Calvin Ridley, we'll see you next year, buddy.
Seriously. But it's an interesting pick for sure. And you know what, Drake London, I mean, we'll see if this pans out this way, but Drake London, during the NFL broadcast I was watching, his pro comparison was Larry Fitzgerald, which is some big shoes to fill for a rookie. Usually they don't get comparisons like that. At pick 9 was the Seattle Seahawks. I thought this was another place maybe a quarterback could go. But no, they took the third best tackle off the board in Charles Cross. This is really funny to me because I know I'm kind of highlighting some other later round picks. And I'm going to do it again with the Seattle. Because Seattle got Charles Cross, and they got, for sure, another lineman later, if not 2 linemen later. And what's ironic and funny to me about that is Russell Wilson's biggest gripe with Seattle was them not drafting offensive linemen for him. It was him running for his life, and then no one drafted offensive linemen. And they're like, Russ, we're just trying to get you weapons. And he's like, this is what I want, and I want to stay in Seattle. And then they trade Russell Wilson and don't have a quarterback. Drew Lock doesn't count. And now you're drafting linemen. It's really ironic to me.
Mm-hmm.
Next at 10 is the Jets' second first-round pick, and it's Garrett Wilson. Wilson to Wilson. Zach to Garrett. I mean, great pick. They need a wide receiver. They stay competitive. Not much to say about that. They need an offensive playmaker. Yeah. Next was the Saints. Excuse me. I have excitement gas. The Saints moved all the way up from, I want to say
16 and 19, right? Or is it just 16?
It was 16. It was just 16.
Yeah.
So they moved from 16 all the way up to 11. They traded with Washington. And I was thinking, oh man, Saints trading up that much. Are they going to get a quarterback here? No, they did not. They got Chris Olave. Makes sense, I think. I don't hate the pick. Chris Olave was a top receiver in this draft. They have Mike Evans, who didn't play really last year. I don't really know what his situation is. He's kind of a baby anyways. But if he can play, they need more playmakers for Jameis. That's who they're going to be rolling with. Spoiler alert, they didn't draft a quarterback. Just gave it all away.
Oh.
At 12, the Lions traded their 32nd pick in the first round to Minnesota. The rivals moved all the way up to 12 and got Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams was the wide receiver, even though he's recovering from his injury, is the wide receiver I thought was going to go first, in my opinion.
Sure.
Because before his injury, he was regarded as the standalone top wide receiver prospect heading into the draft. I think the Saints were, had talked to him or rumored to maybe get him, but they just picked up Olave the pick before. And I know the Chiefs, there was rumors that maybe they might trade up and get Jameson Williams. But instead he goes to Detroit. And maybe this is just his personality. I don't know Jameson that well. But I thought he looked pissed. I thought he looked very, very upset that he was on the Lions. On his draft interview, like live there on the stage, she asked him how it feels for the Lions to trade all these picks away and to move up and to grab him. She said, that must make you feel very valuable. And he goes, yeah, we're not going to talk about that right now. Ready to go to work. Didn't say anything about it. Straight face, no smile. They even did a press release with him and Aiden Hutchinson holding their jerseys. No smiles. I don't know if that's just his personality, but he doesn't look to be pleased. Hard to be pleased when you're in Detroit. They've had some tough times. Tough times. It's like I even want to make a joke, too, that, like, Detroit is where your careers go to die and people can't succeed. But that's not true, because they've had Calvin Johnson, Stafford, and Barry Sanders. It's just that the team itself can't succeed. Yeah. Individually, I guess you can. After 12 was another trade. Trades back to back to back. And it was the Eagles trading ahead of the Ravens with Houston, I believe, to grab Jordan Davis. Now, this may or may not be true. I think that they traded ahead of the Ravens because maybe they thought the Ravens were going to grab Jordan Davis. So that maybe slighted them a little bit, which I was happy about, but I did not stay happy for long. The thing before I move on with the Jordan Davis pick is, again, I may be a casual, is what if you want to call me that, if you're a Philadelphia fan listening, but and I know they're on a 4-3, but they have Fletcher Cox, who is old, who's going probably to retire soon, but they also have Javon Hargrave, our boy, the Gravedigger. Did they really need Jordan Davis? I guess if you're saying that Fletcher Cox will retire, then that shores up that position, because I'm assuming they play a 4-3, is what I would guess. But, I was happy to see at first that maybe they took the Jordan Davis away, but then came the Baltimore Ravens. And they did it. They do what they do every year. They draft well. They drafted top safety prospect Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame.
It hurts. It really hurts.
That one was depressing. Not because I necessarily thought he was going to last to the Steelers pick. A little hopeful. But now that he's a rival, he's on a division opponent, and the Ravens of all teams, and now we have to kind of hate him and play him twice a year, along with that great secondary that they already have in Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, and newly signed Marcus Williams. Rough. That was tough.
And I don't want to give away anything, even though everyone that is probably listening definitely watched the draft. But I blame Minnesota for that one, which we'll get into later. But come on.
You can get into it now because they already traded their pick because they traded to the Lions.
But depending on what they would have got, if they would have drafted outside the position, then I wouldn't have been like, oh, it's not their fault. If they weren't targeting that position, I would have been like, you never know. You can't place the blame on them.
Yeah, but I do think they were, because I think they're targeting a defensive back regardless. There was rumors that the Vikings wanted to go for Derek Stingley, that they thought maybe he would last at 12, and Derek Stingley went at 3. So I think Kyle Hamilton was definitely potentially on their board, and I would have much rather Kyle Hamilton play for that purple team instead of this purple team. But what are you going to do? The next pick, as we move on, trying to shake off the depression of the Ravens drafting well, was Kenyon Green going to Houston. Now, here, if you listen to my reaction podcast, is where I start to get hysterical, because Kenyon Green, again, another great lineman, interior guard, not necessarily what we would have gotten, but a great lineman off the board. Now, I'm just distraught over the most recent pick, and it's spiraling quickly. The next pick is Washington at 16. They get Jahan Dotson, a guy that you and I looked at on our wide receiver episode. Check that one out. Or don't, because the draft's over. But we did a thing on Jahan Dotson, and I think that's a great pick for Washington to complement Terry McLaurin. They've only had one wide receiver there. Now they have Terry. They got Jahan, who I think is a very good receiver. And now it's time for Carson Wentz to do something, to prove he's not a big fat bust. He's very close to proving that. Next, at 17, Chargers get Zion Johnson, a very Charger pick. They already got Rashawn Slater last year. They get another great guard, potentially that Steelers are looking at, so that sucked. These linemen are flying off. And then, this was the big one. And this actually happened before this pick. But the Titans traded away A.J. Brown to the Philadelphia Eagles to get their pick at number 18. Oh, man, when I tell you I was blown away by that. I couldn't believe it. That's all I talked about for the next 15 minutes of the draft was that A.J. Brown trade.
Oh, yeah.
The thought behind it, I think, was the Titans decided they didn't want to pay A.J. Brown for some reason, as he is their best receiver and maybe top 10 in the league. I'd have to do like an actual list to see. But instead decided to draft a wide receiver, Treylon Burks, whose pro comp was A.J. Brown, according to the NFL broadcast I was watching, and the risk for them and the reward that they're trying to achieve is drafting a wide receiver that is similar to A.J. Brown's play style and getting similar production out of a player for cheap.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What do you think?
I think the idea is there, right? Like, I was very upset with it, and then you brought up the good point of, saving money and not wanting to pay A.J. Brown and getting a guy like Treylon Burks. And I really like Treylon Burks. He was a guy that I kept a close eye on. I thought he showed a lot of talent at the University of Arkansas. He's a good guy. The thing that I struggle with, right, is exactly like you said. I think A.J. Brown could have been definitely considered within that top 10 wide receiver talent. But there's always a risk when you get new guys, especially, when you're drafting, because even though they could be lights out in college, you don't know the productivity you're going to get from these guys. And so even though you're like, hey, this guy is exactly what we want, it's what we need, you still got rid of a wide receiver just to get a wide receiver, and you might not get the exact same production you would out of him. Not only that, but like getting rid of that chemistry between him and Tannehill, like, I don't know. I think it's tough. It was a very interesting move. I did not like that pick personally, but I don't know. We'll see what the Titans do.
I feel as though the Titans gave Tannehill a big middle finger in this draft, because not only did they trade away his top wide receiver, but they also drafted his potential replacement in Malik Willis in the 3rd round, which which I've heard that he says he doesn't care, but I think he does. He's not pleased about it. Like you said, trading away your number 1 wide receiver can do things to a quarterback mentally. It was very insane. There is, again, like we discussed, there is the thought that because wide receivers are coming out of college and they're so productive right away, like the Justin Jeffersons of the world and the Jamar Chases of the world, that sure, that maybe you don't want to pay, and the wide receiver market this offseason exploded. So sure, maybe you don't want to pay a wide receiver and you want to just keep drafting them and just play on the rookie contract, but it seems like it could be a potential slippery slope for that. It's not to say that I don't want to see these players get paid because they already make millions of dollars, but when they've earned the contract, they've earned the contract, and I thought A.J. Brown earned it. Now he's got that from Philadelphia now. He's I believe he's a $57 million guaranteed, 4-year, $100 million, and he's on the Eagles. And I think Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, that was a great pickup for Philly.
Yeah, I feel like there was a way easier pick for Philly. They needed that. I know their wide receiver room was looking pretty bleak and just having Devontae Smith, but yeah, getting a guy like AJ Brown, I'm curious to see how Jalen Hurts plays this next season.
Yeah, I agree too. Something to look out for. After that insanity was the Saints pick again, and I already spoiled it, but we were thinking, could this be a place where the Saints get a quarterback? And it was not. They picked up Trevor Penning. Definitely fits New Orleans' attitude type. So they got a tackle. And then it was our pick. And I'm sweating because at the time, all the quarterbacks were available. Was it going to be Malik? Was it going to be Kenny Pickett? And Franco came out there, and he looked at the draft card, and his eyes widened. He couldn't believe it. He was so excited, so pumped. And he opened up that card, and he said, I love this pick. With the 20th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, let's go. Kenny Small Hands.
Let's go.
I was so excited. And unlike you, who was sweating and eager to see this, I was freezing my butt off at a boys lacrosse game. You know who you are. No, I'm kidding. I was not a...
the pick?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I was fortunate to watch it on my phone and kind of be in between games, but I was so stoked to get Kenny Pickett at number 20. You and I talked about it for so long, saying, if there's a guy to get in this draft at quarterback, if we are to get a quarterback, it is Kenny Pickett out of the University of Pitt. It's so exciting, and they did exactly what I wanted them to do and not trade up for a quarterback. If they would have traded up, I would have been like, oh God, this is tough. Like, I'm super happy about Kenny, but to trade away all this, draft stock and value would have been a hard hit.
That is the biggest positive from it. I think myself at the time, after seeing the crazy trades and also still being butthurt over the Baltimore's pick of Kyle Hamilton, when they announced Kenny Pickett, I was surprised because I heard of all the talk about Malik Willis potentially being drafted, how much Mike Tomlin loved Malik Willis. When it came down to it and both of them were available, they chose Kenny. They chose the more, at least on the scouting report says, professional-ready player. Because Kenny Pickett's already 24. And I think, like myself, in the moment, and like a lot of Steelers fans, I wouldn't say I was mad about it at all. I was kind of indifferent because the quarterback class, it was something to be left desired. Truly it was. And there was so much talent on the board still. So it's kind of like, oh man, was this really the best choice? But after sleeping on it, I agree, Chris. I think I'm very excited. You and I both, out of all the quarterbacks, we were in the minority that wanted Kenny Pickett more than Malik. No offense to Malik. I hope he has a great career. But we definitely liked Kenny more. And I am pumped about that. Now, I think that it's going to make preseason very exciting. It's going to make training camp very exciting. There's a big quarterback competition coming up between him and Mitch. And I'm good to rock with whoever. I know a lot of Steeler fans have said, hey, if Kenny Pickett doesn't start week 1 or by week 4 even, then that draft was a bust. I wouldn't say that. I think a lot of rookie quarterbacks have a really tough time in their first year, regardless of skill level. Joe Burrow didn't have a good time. It was, although the Bengals' whole entire team wasn't very good. Peyton Manning had a very rough year his first year. Trevor Lawrence last year didn't play very well. These things just happen. I'm fine to rock with whoever deserves that starting spot, whether it be Mitch or Kenny. But I think for the future, that's not a bad pick, and we'll see. Hopefully it works out for us.
Yeah, it's super exciting. I think Kenny Pickett, like you said, is the most polished quarterback in the draft and the guy who is game day ready. I was watching a lot of press conferences with Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin, and it was kind of cool what they said, but Kevin Colbert was not only surprised to get Kenny at 20 because he thought he would be way earlier in the draft, but they said, and I quote, we traveled all around the world just to find like our number one pick right at our back door, which is really cool,
Right.
you know, because they Steelers sent guys out to all these different pro days, looking at guys like Sam Howell and Matt Corral and Malik Willis, and you know, and all these people are saying, you know, the Steelers are going to go this way, they're going to go that way, and it's kind of cool that they bring the, you know, the guy who literally comes within those same double doors, is on a field right next to them, meets these same guys, as along with these same workers. I think there's a lot to be excited about, and the fact that Kenny also has experience playing at Heinz Field, I don't know how you can't just get chills from it. It's a very exciting pick, and I'm very looking forward to seeing how he does for us in the future.
Exactly. So moving on from that pick, next was the Chiefs at 21. They traded up, obviously.
They did, yeah.
I don't remember what they traded or how they got there, but they drafted Trent McDuffie, who it was the third top cornerback potentially on the board. Then it was the Packers pick at 22. They drafted Quay Walker, inside linebacker. What was kind of wild to me about that is if you listen to our inside linebacker podcast for potential prospects, is out of the earlier ones of Quay Walker, he was kind of the one I was the least impressed with. He didn't really seem to cause the tackles, but he was just kind of there to help gang tackle.
Yeah.
Nothing really impressed me about that, and it's surprising that his teammate, Nakobe Dean, was still on the board for a very long time, and Devin Lloyd was still on the board. But they decided but the Packers went with Quay Walker. Yeah, it was very interesting to me. I think it was kind of a reach. Yep. Next was Buffalo, who traded up. And here's who they traded with. Because Baltimore traded back into the first round. Because they traded away Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, to the Arizona Cardinals. Which was insane to me, too, because it's just a high-profile pick. Now, yeah, I see you shrugging your shoulders, Chris. I agree. I think Marquise isn't really like that good. Ravens fans can fight me all they want, but it's true. I don't think they're gonna miss him. He doesn't really fit in their passing style play. I mean, he played well for them, but he wants to catch a lot of passes. He wants the ball all the time, and I think that was actually probably a pretty good trade for Baltimore. Go back in the first round.
Yeah, but I agree.
I don't really have much more to say about that, to be honest. Hollywood Brown got traded away, and it is what it is. However, it's more clear now why Arizona traded for Hollywood Brown, because a little breaking news away from the draft talk was DeAndre Hopkins got suspended for 6 games for what's the right terminology? Like illegal drug use or something?
Performance enhancement drugs.
Right. And I don't want to get on a big tangent, but I saw a funny joke because he had a post that said, "I'll see you in week 7. I feel so ashamed. I take great pride in knowing what I want to put in my body and knowing what I'm putting in my body, and that's like something I am proud of." And someone had a great joke that said, DeAndre Hopkins wanting to get a COVID vaccine. No way. DeAndre Hopkins trying to get performance enhancers that are legal. Yes, sir. So... but anyways, so the Buffalo Bills traded up to Baltimore's second first-round pick at 23, and they drafted Kaiir Elam, cornerback from Florida. Not my favorite cornerback, but it makes sense. They need a second one, and he could probably fit in well there. Then it was the Cowboys pick at 24. Everyone was talking about, oh man, are the Cowboys going to draft Devin Lloyd? Could you imagine Micah Parsons and Devin Lloyd, the chaos that would cause? No, they drafted tackle Tyler Smith, whose one of his bullet points was too many penalties. I think that was a whack pick. Whack pick. I know they got rid of La'el Collins, but yeah, whack pick. Then it was Baltimore at 25. And who did they get but another player that Chris and I wanted in Tyler Linderbaum, the center from
Ravens.
Iowa. Now, it was nice to see some Steeler fans on the community page on Twitter kind of boost me up. I had a moment of depression where I tweeted out how sad I was that the Ravens had drafted Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum, But you guys came back with that F them energy, and I like it, baby. A lot of you guys said you guys actually didn't like Linderbaum because he's shorter. I do, and you try to compare it to Kendrick Green, which I think is a big stretch. I think Linderbaum will be way better than Kendrick Green, but hopefully not, because now he's on the Ravens. So hopefully he sucks. But I don't think he will, but we'll see. Then you got the Jets trading back into the first round for the third first-round pick of the day. I mean, they could have been done after this, but they still got some good players in the second round. But they got Jermaine Johnson. So the Jets clean sweep out of the first round with Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, and Jermaine Johnson.
And I will say, just because I feel like I have to, my fiance went to the same high school as Jermaine Johnson, as she did Antoine Winfield Jr. And, Antoine Winfield Jr. even follows her. So Eden Prairie High School, shout out to you guys over there. I have no affiliation with you other than my future wife. But Jermaine Johnson and Antoine Winfield, if you want to follow this page just for the hell of it, because we're from Minnesota, I mean, by all means.
Yeah, please do. We won't be talking about you at all, but please do. Then at 27, the Jaguars traded back to the first round, and they picked up Devin Lloyd because they need a linebacker. We just swiped Miles Jack from them. So, makes sense. And then finally, Devin Lloyd goes off the board. I can't believe Devin Lloyd fell to 27. His tape is immaculate. It really is. Then at 28, it was the Packers' second pick in the first round, and they drafted Devontae Wyatt. All three Georgia linemen gone. I think a lot of Packers fans were probably pretty pissed that they did not pick a wide receiver in the first round, but they got their guy in the second round, so it's all right.
Yeah.
Then the biggest reach in the draft at 29, the New England Patriots drafted Cole Strange. You can argue with me all you want.
What a strange pick.
Pun intended. You can argue with us all you want. That pick was whack. For all the people that are out there, all the linemen that are out there, people had a 4th-round grade on this dude to get Cole Strange. But Belichick knows what he's doing. I don't care. I really don't care. I think that pick was so whack. Any other lineman.
And the Patriots, I feel like, are a team that always do this. And I don't know why they do, but I was following the draft cast on ESPN, and it's kind of fun clicking on the names because it'll give them their position rank, overall rank in the draft, and then the grade that they gave him. I think this guy was like the 12th overall dude of his position. He was like the 70-something of the draft, and they gave him like a grade of a 77 when everyone in the draft in the first round is like an 88 or higher. It was awful. It was such a bad pick, and it's like you have so many other areas that you could have improved on. But I don't know. It's up to the Patriots now. It's not my problem.
Right, exactly. After that was the Chiefs' second first-round pick, and they got George Karlaftis. So they go with Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis, really trying to shore up that defense. The Chiefs had a very great draft. We'll try to briefly touch on that, but I know this is already running very long. Cincinnati Bengals were at 31. And they got a pick who I was also depressed about, and they picked up Daxton Hill, the safety from Michigan.
Bad.
We also talked about him in our podcast, and he's really freaking good. So to go up against Kyle Hamilton and Daxton Hill twice a year is not ideal. However, our second-round pick has a highlight of him destroying Daxton Hill, and we'll get to who that is in a bit. Then, to finish off the first round, the Minnesota Vikings drafted safety Lewis Cine out of Clemson. That's it. That's the first round. That's how it finished out.
Disappointing pick.
Yeah. Lewis Cine. I know a lot of people like Lewis Cine, and us saying that we don't like him is, if anyone listens and cares, might make some people upset, but his tape just wasn't very exciting. Hopefully good for the Vikings. Maybe he'll play well for them. He seemed like an all right player. He seemed like a Terrell Edmonds, to be honest.
I mostly just say it disappointing, too, because they should have drafted Kyle Hamilton, so the Ravens didn't. But I'm not bitter. It is fine.
But as far as I would say the winners of the draft, very quickly, would be the Baltimore Ravens. They had phenomenal picks, not only the first-round picks. I believe they got Travis Jones in the second. They also got man, who else did they get in the third? They got someone else that was really good. That made me mad. They got Travis Jones, Jesus himself.
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head.
I know they got the tackle from Minnesota in the fourth round, which was lame. Oh, they got David Ajobu in round two, actually. And Travis Jones in round 3. But Ajobu in round 2, whose coaches was in Michigan and is now the Baltimore Ravens defensive coach. They got Jalen Amar Davis. I mean, they cleaned up. We took a guy from them, but they also had a billion picks. But they had a great draft. The Chiefs had a great draft in their first 2 defenders, plus they got Sky Moore later. And I think the Jets had a great draft. I mean, the first 3 picks they could have been done there, but then they also got the best running back on the board too.
I feel like you could argue that both New York teams had a really good draft, to be honest.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So it kind of sucks that the Chiefs and the Ravens had very good drafts, but it's exciting when teams like the Giants, the Jets, and a little bit of Detroit have a better draft too, and hopefully that can help them out in the future. But now it's, after that long excursion, let's go into who the Steelers drafted. The 2022 draft class for the Pittsburgh Steelers, baby. Round 1, you already know it. It's Kenny Pickett. Not much more to say. We already talked about it. Hoping he does well. And in round 2, the Steelers drafted George Pickens.
Yes. I'm all for this pick, Dom.
Yeah, we were very pumped.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, and let the record show that 4, possibly 5 of the guys that we drafted, Dom and I scouted and talked about in our previous podcast episodes. So pat on the back to us, honestly. Maybe a round of applause. Yeah, it feels really, really good. But Pickens is by far my favorite wide receiver in this entire draft. He is so gritty. He literally catches everything. I think his drop rate was like 2.7% in all of his college career. He made big plays from all the way from freshman year till now. Even when he came back from his ACL injury, which apparently he came back way quicker than expected, he didn't get a lot of playing time, but he still made his presence known with some big catches. And even aside from his ability to catch the ball and to make big plays, this dude just is a bully. I've seen a video circulating around of him literally tossing a Georgia Tech defender into a wall, but he just pushes over guys. He blocks extremely well. I am so dang excited about Pickens. I thought it was by far one of my top picks.
Yeah, I was very surprised to see him drop to us. There's also a highlight, too, of him destroying Daxton Hill, who's the new Bengals safety. He has that black Air Force energy. He's got an attitude. He's aggressive. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the video of him being drafted, of him standing slanted up. He's got the attitude that I think that we've been missing. I know a lot of Steeler fans are maybe worried about some character concerns coming out of him. I say, don't be worried about that, because his character concerns are different from the character concerns that Steeler fans have been complaining about for the past 3 to 4 years. This isn't a TikTok dancer. This isn't a showboater. This isn't a cocky guy. This isn't a guy who wants music at practices. Sorry, Claypool. I still hope you do better. This isn't that kind of receiver. This is a guy who wants to hit you in the mouth. And if you listen to him talk, he's actually a really nice guy. He's really chill. He's down to earth. But I think when he puts those pads on, he's ready to rumble. He's ready to punch you. And, I guess the downside you could say is maybe he picks up a couple personal foul penalties. But I think no one has been afraid of the Steelers for the past couple of years. And I think we need people to be afraid of the Steelers. And we play a lot of good defensive backs in the AFC North. And he needs to hit them in the mouth. And you know what? We also had another Georgia wide receiver in the day that used to smack people around, and Hines Ward. So,
yes, sir.
So hopefully he can bring some of that attitude to these other receivers. And like Chris said, very excited. Our third round pick, also very good. Another player we talked about in our podcast was DeMarvin Leal, defensive end at Texas A&M. Defensive end or defensive tackle, I guess. It was kind of unclear, but yeah, also a huge stud. Can play both things on the line. He causes. I talked about it in our podcast last week. He causes a lot of disruption on his own. He can move the pocket around. He can swat down balls. I think teaming up with Cam Hayward's going to teach him a lot. I think hopefully if Tuitt can come back, that's a great rotational piece too, especially with Alu if he can come back as well. I think that was a really big need for us, and I think they nailed it. I think they with who was available, I think they got it right.
Yeah, Leal, I thought was a phenomenal pick, especially for where we got him. I know previously he even had talks about potentially how he could have been a first-round guy because he shows first-round talent with a lot of his plays. But I think what kind of shot him back was his just inconsistency in play. And I watched a lot about him, a lot of talking about him, and I even made a post on our Twitter page asking, which got a lot of great responses from it and everything. But I think we're getting an absolute steal out of DeMarvin Leal. I think if we can coach him through those inconsistencies, he will just be a difference maker. Whether he starts as a rotational piece or maybe he wins over a starting job, I think he'll eventually get there, and I think he can be an absolute stud. And just a fun fact, just because I don't think a lot of people saw it, Charles Cross, the number 9 pick, right? I believe so.
Yeah.
Of his 719 pass blocking attempts, he only allowed 2 sacks, 2, and one of those were from DeMarvin Leal last year. So I think we got a really great playmaker out of him.
Yeah, there's also tape of him destroying Evan Neal, too, in a game against Alabama. I think that defensive line was a little bit of a worry, especially because we still don't know what Stephon Tuitt's going to do. I've heard things are moving in the right direction for potentially him playing, if that's still what he wants to do. But thinking about the defensive line with Cam, Tuitt, and Alu as your base players, but rotational pieces with Montravius Adams, with DeMarvin Leal, with even Isaiah Loudermilk, who played well last year as a rookie thing. I think those are great rotational pieces out there, and that's a great way to shore up a hole that I thought we had.
Yes.
Our 4th round pick came, and we were thinking, man, who are they going to get now? Are they going to go for a defensive back, maybe a lineman? And they picked up another wide receiver, and I got to tell you, Chris and I, we were not bummed out about it. I think we're pretty excited about it. They picked up Calvin Austin III, who was a receiver that Chris and I also talked about on our podcast. He's 5'8", but he don't play like it. He's tough. He's physical. He played on the outside. He got releases like crazy. He runs great routes, and he runs a 4.38 speed. So he's fast, man.
Shee.
And Matt Canada, this is your time to shine. You got the weapons now. With George Pickens, who can play all the positions, Calvin Austin with that speed to maybe do those RPO stuff, the jet sweeps that you want to run.
Yes, sir.
Najee, Freiermuth, Claypool, Deontay. Canada, this is your time to shine. And if you can't succeed with this, then you're gone. To be plain and simple. But yeah, Calvin Austin, that was a great pick, I think.
I feel like you said it beautifully. You guys know, you listened to me when I scouted him and talked about him before. Definitely one of my favorite guys. I think he's fast, he's quick, easily a slot guy. But like you said, he played all of his time on the outside. I'm speechless. I'm so happy about it. And we even took a player away from the Ravens, according to Twitter pages that I've seen. So
yeah, that's apparently who the Ravens wanted. But they also had 6 4th-round picks, and they drafted a punter before that. So if they really wanted him, they could have got him. So I don't feel bad about it at all. Plus, it's the Ravens, so who cares? But I think getting these 2 wide receivers may be a little shocking to some people, but it shored up a huge weak spot, which was receiver. We lost 3 in the offseason, in Juju, James Washington, and Ray. And grabbing Pickens and Calvin Austin, it doesn't feel like a wide receiver is our weakness anymore. Now it feels like it's a strength. Finally, not finally. We still have a couple more picks left. We didn't have a 5th round pick, but in the 6th round, they drafted Connor Hayward, Cam Hayward's little brother.
I'll be back. You keep going.
Okay. I was like, what do you want me to wait for? They drafted Cam Hayward's little brother. Now, this was a pick that seemed destined to happen. Every mock draft that we had read online saw the Steelers picking up Connor Hayward. Most of them in the 7th round, so I'm not too sure. Maybe they potentially reached on Connor Hayward. We're not mad about it. We're not mad about the pick. It seemed like it was a for sure thing that was going to happen. Don't know if it should have happened in the 6th round, but nevertheless, here he is. It sounds like from Matt Canada, I know he's listed as a fullback, but it sounds like he'll be playing tight end mostly, or he'll be a backup tight end, probably a 3rd-string tight end, and he's going to make his mark on special teams. That's what I've heard. He's really a great player in. But, welcome to the team. We have 4 sets of brothers now. Edmonds, Watt, Hayward, and the Davis brothers. So we're just collecting them all, baby. In the 7th round pick, we had 7th round, I think, is where I would give our grades bad grades. Because up till then, I would give us like an A, and I think, or A minus even. And I think the 7th round pushed us to a B plus territory, B. And in the first pick in the 7th round, we picked up Mark Robinson, inside linebacker from Ole Miss. Not a lot of tape on him. He's a guy that was a walk-on Ole Miss. The tape comparison is Vince Williams. He shoots the gaps really well for run defense. That is a good thing about his play. But honestly, with Buddy Johnson on our team and UG3, also with Bush and Miles Jack, he is not making the squad unless he contributes on special teams. And I felt like we had other positions of need we could have gone for in the draft of people who were available. At the time, Rasheed Walker was still available, and they did not get him. And then in the 2nd pick in the 7th round, the Steelers drafted Chris Oladokin, a quarterback from SDSU, Chris's alma mater.
Woo!
Also a weird pick. I get the reasoning behind it. We've heard that the Steelers wanted another quarterback, probably to get rid of Mason Rudolph, because you don't want to pay Mason's probably going to be a 3rd-string quarterback, I'm imagining, and you don't want to pay your 3rd-string quarterback as much as we're paying Mason Rudolph. So I think they just wanted to secure another quarterback. They didn't want to risk UDFAs, and they just wanted to kind of lock the bag in. I don't know if I necessarily agree. I understand where they're trying to go because they're going to save us money by somehow getting rid of Rudolph in one way or another, either by trade or cutting. But again, we had positions of need out there. There was Kellen Deesh from Arizona State, I believe, right? As a tackle that would have been a great value that late in the 7th round, since a lot of mocks had him going at round 4. And then there was also our boy Smoke Monday, who we had talked about in our podcast as a safety. We needed like safety help, especially at the time, but we did not draft him either. We drafted Chris Oladokin. So, welcome to the team and do your best to beat out Mason or make it seem worth your while.
I agree.
So that was the Steelers 2022 draft class. The thing, like I just said, with Smoke Monday, where they didn't pick up a safety at all in the draft, which was kind of disheartening. But they fixed that problem immediately because the day after the draft was over, the Steelers signed DeMonte Kazi, who was a 5-year starter in the NFL. He's a safety. He's got 12 picks to his name. Some veteran presence. His contract was released today. It was for $1 million. So I think he'll be the backup to Terrell. So our starter's making $2 million. Our backup's making $1 million. He's got solid play, and I think obviously they didn't draft a safety, but to pick that up, I think that shored up that hole very nicely to just kind of lock up safeties, and we don't have to worry about that for at least this year.
Yeah. Good pickup.
Yeah, definitely. And man, it's getting real. This podcast is getting really late. That's the exciting thing. Do we want to run over UDFAs, Chris? Or do you want to save that for next week?
I can definitely make it fast, real quick. What would you give a grade for our draft?
Good point. I would say because of those last two, kind of bringing it down, I'll say B plus. because I did like the top 4 picks. I think the Connor Hayward pick I like. I think was a little bit of a reach, and then the last 2 picks I don't like at all. But they're Steelers, so I like them now. But I'll say B+.
Yeah, and I know it probably seems like all I do ever is agree with Dom, but I'm going to agree with him again. And we talk about this stuff all the time. But yeah, I definitely agree with the B+. I think the first 4 picks were absolutely phenomenal. Definitely what we needed. Connor Hayward was a bit of a stretch. I definitely feel like we could have gotten him a little later. And then I do think the last 2 picks we could have gone with other positional needs. But I am not a GM, so I don't make the call, obviously. But yeah, I'd say a B+. It's a solid grade.
Yeah, why don't you go through it quickly, Chris?
Yeah, so I'll try to make this as quick as possible. So after the draft, the Steelers signed 10 undrafted free agent rookies. And I'll just kind of go through a list and kind of say what they are and what they could bring to the team. We signed offensive tackle Jake Dixon out of Duquesne. He is 6'6", 290 pounds. He's originally from Pittsburgh, which is kind of cool. So that's probably why he wanted to come and play for us, or at least have an opportunity to show what he's got. I'm probably not going to give you any stats on any kind of lineman because apparently that is non-existent, and you can't find that stuff. But he ran a 5.2 140 time, so is kind of a slower dude. From what I understand, his strengths are he has some good size, he's athletic, and he has good agility to mirror pass rushers. The bad is he has pretty short arms. His grip strength to maintain blocks lacks, and quick defenders get across his face pretty easily. Next guy, and this is a guy who I've been seeing a ton of responses for, so everyone's really hopeful that he'll for sure make the practice squad, if not maybe make a roster spot. But that's Mateo Durant, running back out of Duke. 2021, he had 255 carries for 1,241 yards and 9 touchdowns. To add on to his stats, he had 27 receptions for 256 yards and 2 touchdowns. I really like this tape. I watched a lot of him. He really seems like a guy who's explosive through the hole. I don't know if there's much decision-making that goes on, but he definitely is a guy who knows what hole he's supposed to go through, and he just shoots for it immediately. So I think when it works phenomenally. And then he has that breakaway speed to just kind of leave the defenders in the dust. He has a 4.38 40 time. So he's fast. I don't know what the difference will be between him and Anthony McFarland, or what we hoped Anthony McFarland would be. But if he does end up making a spot, look out for Mateo Durant.
Right. That's the main question is why would he make it above Anthony McFarland is the main question. I also want to point out Mateo Durant also earned the largest UDFA contract ever given out by the Steelers. So there's definitely some promise towards him. Okay.
The next guy is Donovan Jeter, defensive tackle out of Michigan. I wasn't really too impressed with him, which is probably why he didn't get drafted. In all honesty, he's 6'3", 325 pounds, so he has a lot of good size to him. Yeah, he runs a 5.15 40, so he's not the fastest, but watching his highlights, he was definitely just a part of a lot of team tackles. He had 24 total tackles and 2 tackles for losses, no sacks. I think he had like 2 pass deflections, but nothing about his tape really stood out to me. He just kind of was a part of a team and a good defense, so maybe that's why he got more recognized. I really don't expect him to be making a roster spot, but he'll maybe over on the practice squad. Next, probably my favorite defender out of everyone that we got was Tyree Johnson, edge out of Texas A&M. So he's teammates with DeMarvin Leal, and stats are actually pretty similar. 2021 stats, he had 31 total tackles with 9 tackles for loss and 8.5 sacks. So he definitely was able to get to the quarterback. He has a really good move where he pushes his lineman's hands immediately down and is able to swoop around. I saw that probably on every one of his sacking highlights, so I'm kind of excited to see if he can maybe make a spot or for sure be a reserve for us. Then we have TD Moultrie, an edge out of Auburn. He had 33 total tackles with 7.5 tackles for loss and 3.5 sacks. Chris Owens, he's an offensive guard out of Alabama. I feel like Alabama linemen usually get a lot more, looks around them. So I don't really know what his big deal was. He is 6'3", 305 pounds. He ran a 5.24 40. He's really good at staying low to the center of gravity, and he has some natural bend. He plays with a wide base, and his awareness is pretty good. He's able to pick up blockers or leave from one block to another. Areas that he lacks on, he just needs to work on his technique more so in the pass protection, and his footing is pretty muddy. It's really slow, so he definitely could maybe be coached up on that a little bit. So there's that. Then we have Chris Steele, cornerback out of USC. He had 33 total tackles, 2 tackles for losses, 1 sack, 2 interceptions, and 3 pass deflections. Jordan Tucker, offensive tackle out of North Carolina. This is the big boy. He is 6'6", 344 pounds, and he ran a 5.37 40. So he's pretty slow, but he's a 3-year starter out of North Carolina. He has great size and can engulf and overpower defenders. The thing that kind of gets to him is he is seen as kind of a poor athlete when it came to open field movement. He kind of just stops playing after that initial block. Slow foot movement, and he allows defenders to get into his chest easily. The next highly regarded guy we had was Jalen Warren, running back out of Oklahoma State. He had 256 carries for 1,216 yards and 11 total touchdowns. Honestly, between the two running backs who were highly regarded for the Steelers as far as undrafted free agent rookies. So be on the lookout for Jalen Warren. And then last but not least, we have Bryce Watts, cornerback out of UMass. He had 43 total tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1 interception, and 4 pass deflections. Watching his tape, wasn't super impressed. He kind of is one of those guys who, maybe is a part of a play that the quarterback way overthrows or something, and then he puts out his hands. He's like, I did that. I'm the defender. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but that's the list of our undrafted free agent rookies.
Whew. Thank you, Chris, for all that information and trying to make it as quick as you can. That's a lot of players, especially for many who might not make the team. I do want to update the thing I said about the highest contract the Steelers have given out. That is actually false. I just saw an update. I think it was the agent saying it's the highest contract a running back has received during this period, but not that the Steelers have given out personally. But anyways, thank you for listening to the Northern Steel podcast. That was a lot of information, but we appreciate you. We are excited. We're just as excited as you are for the season to begin. We always say this every year. This is what we said last year when Najee was drafted. I don't want to wish away the summer, but I think we're ready for some football. We just really want to watch these guys in action. And we got rookie minicamp coming up next week. So hopefully we get to see some coverage there. But that's going to do it for this week. Thank you again. My name is Dominic. This is Chris. And we will see you guys next Thursday. Peace.
Peace out.